I'm Micah. I'm the creator of the Arroyo streaming engine. Arroyo is the easiest way to build real-time data pipelines just by writing SQL. Recently, one of our users asked us about integrating with InfluxDB. Influx is a time series database that makes it really easy to do queries that have a time component, for example, for observability or for financial use cases or anything where you need to aggregate and compute by time. Unfortunately, Arroyo doesn't have a native Influx connector. However, we do have a webhook connector, which lets you send arbitrary HTTP requests as a result of an Arroyo pipeline. And Influx has an HTTP input API. So I want to see if these things could work together. So first, we're going to create a bucket in our local Influx cluster here. We'll just call it Arroyo. Then we're going to create an API token so we can write to it. We'll also call this Arroyo token. Here it is. I'm going to write it here in my terminal as an environment variable, call it influx token, so that Arroyo can use it. We could just embed this straight in our pipeline, but obviously that's insecure, so we prefer to use environment variables. And then we can start a local cluster, which I have running here. So now let's create a pipeline that we're going to sync to Influx. We'll use a common example we use, which is just reading off of the Coinbase WebSocket feed. So we're reading prices. We could do some processing, but let's just read the raw data off of here. So we look at what this looks like. We have prices for every match across the Coinbase exchange on the buy and sell side. And now we want to write this to Influx. So we're going to create our Influx table. We're going to use the raw string format, which expects a single column of type text. We're going to use the webhook connector. We'll set the endpoint to our local Influx cluster. And then we need to set the authorization headers that we're able to authenticate. We're going to use that environment variable we set earlier, influx token. And then we need to set the format. We're going to use raw string because we need to construct the custom string format that InfluxDB expects. And there's a few ways we could do that. We could, for example, write a UDF in Rust or Python, but I'm just going to do this in raw SQL to show you how powerful just SQL can be. So here, we're constructing the line format that Influx expects for its ingestion. It's a pretty simple format, just kind of key value pairs. And if we look at what that looks like, we have our name of our measurement, we have our key value pairs, our value, and then a nanosecond timestamp. So that looks right to me. We can just now insert this into Influx. We'll do a preview with enable syncs. And that will actually cause Arroyo to write to the sync. By default, we don't in preview, so you can play around safely. If we go back here, you can look at our data explorer. You can see we have our bucket, our measurement. We can filter it, and then we can graph it. Cool, so this all works. We could run this for real, but it's not very efficient because as you can see, we're making an HTTP request for every single measurement. And there's a lot of overhead when you're doing an HTTP request for every single update. If we were doing this at 100,000 events per second, that would probably overwhelm our Influx. So to be more efficient, we really want to batch these writes. We want to collect them up over time and then send them all at once. Unfortunately, we can do that too just with Arroyo SQL. We don't need any special features or any special Influx specific support. The way we're going to do this is with a tumbling window. A tumbling window lets us divide time up, so it's actually perfect for this use case, and it's going to look just like this. We have our tumbling window over 1 second, so we're going to wait 1 second to group all of our data, and then we're going to use the array aggregate function, which is going to turn all of these rows grouped up by the tumble and transform them in this way. So each one gets transformed into that line format. And then we're going to use array to string, which joins that array using the new line character. This is how we would express it in SQL. You run this, we can see we get all of our rows here. They're joined by new lines. And then we can launch this for real. This is going to start running. We can see we're getting in 16 events per second here, but we're only writing 1 event per second, roughly, to our sink. So we're really decreasing the amount of load. And we can see it's still loading in here. So that's Arroyo with Influx. It's really easy. It just works using all the built-in features. Thanks. If you have any questions, please chat with us on Discord. And thanks for watching.